An extremely important part of functions is the ability to pass information into the function. This can be done in a couple of ways. The first way is via parameters in the function call. We saw this earlier with the mail function, and you can see examples in almost every function in PHP. They are the values that are passed through to the function in the round brackets when you are invoking that function. Some examples are the string, where the parameter we're passing through is this string to be counted, and mail, where we're passing through 4 parameters, the 2 subject, body, and headers. When you define your function, it is at that time you decide the parameters that you're going to pass into the function. Take a look at this example of a function. You can see here in the function definition we have 2 parameters, numLoops and message, that we want passed into the function. They are declared the same as you would declare a variable, only they are declared within these round brackets. The names of these parameters are what are referenced inside the function. Got numLoops and message. The first thing to note here that there are default values set for these variables. So if these parameters were not actually passed through, then they would have these default values within that function. Now this is where variable scope becomes very important. You can see here when we invoke the function that we pass through the values of loops and finish message, which are global variables. They have global scope, which means that we could not reference them otherwise inside loop generator unless we pass them in as we are here. Now when we pass these in, it's not actually the variables being passed in, only their values. That means if we modified these values inside the function, the values outside of the function will not be affected. When a value is passed through into the function, it is recreated inside the function, or a copy is made into these variables with local scope. Now you might think that is obvious given that the variable names are different. But remember that you can also have the same variable names inside of a function because of scope rules. Now let's take a look at this script being run first of all, as is. Sorry about that, we had an infinite loop going on there. So again, we'll run that. Now you can see that the value of loops is 40 and the value of finish message is you have completed this phase of the test, which are exactly what we have here. Now let's change the names of the function parameters to reflect those used outside of the function. So we're going to name the first function parameter loops and the second one finish message. Change them in here. So you might think, hey, now that we have these the same as the global, we might be able to change them within here. Well, let's try that. Let's redefine loops equal to 80 and finish message equal to, this is a new finish message. Now when we print those outside, you might think that we're going to get these values. We run that again, but no, we've still got the original values. Again, this is an example of scope. Inside we have local scope, outside we have global scope. Even though the names are the same, the local scope is a completely independent value from the global scope. Now there are definite cases that you do want to affect the values of the parameters that are passed through. There are 2 ways to do this. The first way is to pass through variables by reference, as in this example here. This is accomplished by prefixing your parameter declarations in the function with an ampersand sign, as in this function here. We've got numWeeks, an ampersand sign, and then our variable. In this function, the actual variable is modified. An easier way to look at this is, in a regular parameter declaration, a copy of the variable is brought into the function. But when using a reference declaration, it's like a symbolic link is created between the parameter and the variable. So changes in the parameter are reflected in the global scope of the variable. Now, the second way, and the way that I prefer to work with variables inside of a function, is using the global statement. The first line inside my function declaration will contain a list of all the variables that I want to be able to modify inside the function. If we modified that function above to operate in that way, it would be as we have here. This way you're truly importing the variable and value, allowing you to modify the actual variable within the function. Some people might tell you this is a lazy way of programming, and that you should know each and every variable that you're going to modify within the function, and you should pass them by reference. I would respond that this is a huge time saver to use the global statement, because now I can modify that function to add additional variables to be passed in without changing every function call throughout my website. So either way is completely acceptable, but it is up to you which way you prefer to pass variables to be modified, by reference or with the global statement. The last thing you'll need to know for functions is how to get the value of a variable out of the function without using globals or references, and I'll explain that next.